How does it all look? Is my hair good? It's all good.
There is no list. We'll start with that.
Understanding of the royal family.
Well, that's just not true.
I didn't know much about him.
Well, that's just not true. I'm not sure exactly what the outcome will be, but definitely not good.
I would never have introduced them. It would never have occurred to me to introduce them. I couldn't imagine them being two chalk and cheeses would never. I mean, for real, there's nothing there to connect them. I would say very central to that, yes.
Was he part of the work around that, or just in support of you?
He supported me to help them, but then I think he may have tried to use that to insert himself in some way. That would not have surprised me.
Some stories don't disappear because they aren't true. They disappear because the people involved have the money, the power, and the reach to make sure they are buried deep enough that no one dares to dig. But buried doesn't mean gone. And every so often, something cracks the surface. A name, a date, a place. And suddenly, what was once whispered behind closed doors starts breathing again. Some stories don't appear because they aren't true. They disappear because too many powerful people make sure they do. From inside prison walls, Ghislaine Maxwell has reportedly begun hinting at fragments of Andrew's past that were never supposed to resurface. Not detailed confessions, not dramatic accusations, just pieces. Names, timelines, a reminder that not everything can stay buried forever. And among those fragments is a private incident that allegedly took place over 3 days far from palace walls, far from cameras, on a luxury yacht in the south of France. And as a result, a pregnancy and an STD infection that shockingly led to a hysterectomy. If all of these seem like a lot to take in, stay with me, because at the time, it meant nothing to the world. But years later, the woman involved would step directly into the heart of the royal family itself. This is not a story built on opinion. It's a story built on moments people remember but hoped would be forgotten. And to understand why it still matters, we have to go back to who she was before anyone knew her name. And that's where everything truly begins. Before the titles, before the palace gates, before the carefully rehearsed smiles, long before anyone ever imagined she would stand inside royal walls, there was February 2002. Nice, France. A harbor glowing softly under night lights, water calm, yachts lined up like floating symbols of excess and secrecy. One yacht in particular stood apart, owned by a Greek millionaire, private, exclusive, carefully curated, no press, no tourists, no randomness. Every person on board was meant to be there, and everyone knew exactly why. Prince Andrew was coming. At that time, Andrew moved through Europe like the rules didn't apply to him. Private flights, quiet arrivals, powerful circles. His presence alone shifted atmospheres. Doors opened, voices lowered, eyes followed. And on that night, as guests gathered and drinks flowed and music hummed softly beneath conversations, there was a shared understanding that something important was about to happen. Among the guests were people who would later remember details they never thought would matter. Who stood where? Who spoke first? Who noticed what? And then there was Meghan, young, alert, fully aware of the room she was in and the man who was about to step onto that deck. She wasn't there by accident, and she wasn't there to fade into the background. When Andrew finally arrived, there was no announcement. There didn't need to be. The shift was instant. Conversation softened, laughter dimmed, bodies straightened. This is what power does without saying a word. Andrew looked comfortable, relaxed, like the yacht belonged to him. He moved through familiar faces, accepted drinks, smiled easily. This wasn't a man unsure of his place. This was someone who expected attention. And Meghan noticed him immediately. She didn't hesitate. She didn't wait. According to those who were there, she moved straight toward him, placing herself directly in his path. She didn't watch from afar. She didn't linger on the edges. She positioned herself to be seen. Within minutes, they were talking. Within moments, they were no longer strangers. Witnesses would later talk about how quickly the connection formed, how naturally the conversation flowed, how close she leaned in, how his focus drifted away from everyone else. This wasn't subtle, and it wasn't accidental, because before most guests even realized what was happening, Meghan had already claimed his attention. Within half an hour of Andrew's arrival, she wasn't just beside him. She was sitting on his lap, whispering into his ear. People noticed, guests noticed, crew noticed, and then came the stairs. According to multiple accounts, the two moved together toward the lower deck, down a narrow staircase that led away from the party, away from the music, away from witnesses, and into the private cabins below. Once they disappeared, they were not seen again. Not that night, not the next morning. Not the day after that. For 3 full days, Prince Andrew and Meghan remained inside a single cabin. Food was delivered repeatedly to one door. Drinks followed. Crew members spoke later about the silence. No casual appearances, no slipping out for air, just a closed door and time passing. When Meghan finally emerged, she looked different, calm, confident, almost triumphant. One witness later recalled her smiling and saying something that stuck in their mind long after the yacht had sailed away. She said she had found her prince. At the end of the 3rd day, the two reportedly left the yacht together. No explanation, no announcement. The gathering dissolved as quietly as it had begun, leaving behind only memories that refused to fade. After Nice, Andrew returned to London, back to structure, back to protection, back to palace walls where schedules were tight and access was controlled. Meghan, however, believed something had started. According to sources, she tried to stay in contact. Calls, messages, attempts filled with the assumption that what happened mattered. None were returned. Eventually, the calls reached the palace, and that's where the machinery of power revealed itself. According to accounts, Andrew's staff were given clear instructions. Do not put her through. No explanations, no conversations, just silence. The door she believed had opened was now sealed shut, but silence doesn't erase consequences. It only delays them. Because according to people close to the yacht circle, Meghan wasn't trying to reconnect for romance. She was trying to deliver urgent news. Not long after communication stopped, she reportedly told those around her that she believed she was pregnant and that Andrew was the father. The calls that followed were no longer hopeful. They were urgent, pressing, time-sensitive, and still nothing came back. No acknowledgement, no response, no explanation. Faced with isolation, Meghan reportedly made a decision alone, one that would permanently alter her life. The pregnancy was ended without support, without closure, without anyone from Andrew's world acknowledging it ever existed. And that's where the story shifted. What followed, according to multiple claims, was reinvention, new circles, new proximity to influence. For a time, she became involved with powerful figures outside royal silence. But something went wrong. A brief relationship with an actor allegedly exposed her to a serious infection. What seemed manageable escalated quickly. Doctors intervened. By April 2002, sources claimed the situation had become critical. A hysterectomy was reportedly performed quietly, privately, permanently. No headlines, no statements, just a medical outcome that closed one chapter of her life forever. Those close to her would later describe it as a turning point, where ambition hardened, where silence became fuel. Years passed, and then, unexpectedly, Meghan entered the royal family. Openly, publicly, officially. Inside palace walls, there were many faces, but according to observers, there was one man who never fully met her gaze, Prince Andrew. Their interactions were described as tense, avoidant, stiff, a discomfort that stood out against practiced royal composure. Nothing was said, nothing needed to be, because some histories don't disappear. They wait. She didn't accuse, she didn't confess, she didn't hand over names in neat sentences. She did something far more destabilizing. She reminded people of timelines, of overlaps, of moments that didn't quite line up the way they were supposed to. According to accounts, she referenced a private incident on a yacht in the south of France. 3 days, no cameras, no witnesses willing to speak publicly, a pregnancy no one acknowledged, a medical consequence no one discussed. She didn't say it with drama. She said it like inevitability, as if to say, you already know this, you just chose to forget. And that's what made it impossible to dismiss, because the story wasn't built on opinions, it was built on memories. Memories shared quietly among people who were there. Crew members, guests, circles that overlapped long before Meghan ever stepped into royal life. People who remembered the closed cabin door, the repeated food deliveries, the smile she wore when she finally emerged, the words she spoke about finding her prince. These weren't strangers speculating. These were witnesses who never expected the moment to matter. What happened in Nice didn't just vanish when the yacht docked. According to those who believe this account, it set off a chain reaction. Decisions were made, doors were closed, lives were redirected, and silence became policy. For Andrew, the palace absorbed the fallout. Structure, protection, distance. For Meghan, the experience hardened something inside her. According to those close to her, ambition didn't soften, it sharpened. Silence didn't break her, it fueled her. And years later, when she stood inside palace walls, that past didn't need to be explained. It was already there, lingering, unresolved, standing just out of frame. Because power doesn't erase history, it just delays its reckoning. And the most unsettling part of all isn't what was said, it's what was never denied. No public refutation of the yacht, no official dismissal of the timeline, no explanation for the medical outcome, just silence, carefully maintained, strategically preserved. Some stories collapse under scrutiny. This one survived because it never demanded attention. It waited. And when Maxwell allegedly began hinting from behind prison walls, she didn't need to tell the whole story. She only needed to remind people that it existed, that some things were buried, not disproven. Because ghosts don't need witnesses, they only need memory. And for those who believe this account, the memory never left. It just followed quietly, from a yacht in Nice to palace corridors lined with portraits to rooms where eye contact was avoided and the past was never mentioned. Not because it was forgotten, but because it was remembered too well.